My name is Maggie Olson. I am the founder of Nova Chief of Staff. Honored to be here today. Honored to have all of you on the call with us. We are going to dive into our Nova chat here in a second, but first let me share a little bit about Nova Chief of Staff. And when we break records, we also offer some pretty cool deals. So I'll share in a minute what we're going to offer all of you on the call if you're interested in Nova's Chief of Staff certification course. All right, so Nova is the premier destination for Chief of Staff development and education. We launched our course about 2 years ago, and at this point, we just did the math yesterday, we have over 1,400 students across almost 40 countries and over 1,000 companies represented in our course. You can check out our syllabus at novachiefofstaff.com. I always recommend before you do anything else that you dive into the syllabus to see if you think the course would be right for you. Our course price is $1,850 for just the excitement of getting almost 2,000 people registered for this Nova chat. We are giving a discount that will be available for the next 30 days, which is 250 AI Nova. We'll put that link and the code in the chat, but it's $250 off our course. And if you know us, you know that we rarely go on sale or promote. So this is a special occasion that we wanted to do something fun for. All right. Email us if you need anything. We believe in an even playing field. We talk to students going through financial hardship in emerging markets, veterans, nonprofits, government. So please email us if you need to work with us on our course price. All right. We also have info sessions coming up. So head over to Nova's page if you want to learn more about our course. And that is it for now on Nova Chief of Staff. Okay, presented by Jared here with Offsite. Jared is going to dive in a little bit about Offsite. Offsite sponsors Nova Chief of Staff and allows us to keep these webinars completely free for all of you. So with that, Jared, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's get this little screen share going. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So super excited to be here. We've been on a few Nova chats. I got to keep this to 3 minutes or less. And so a little bit about Offsite. We plan team retreats and offsites for hundreds of remote hybrid companies. We're talking about AI today. We power a lot of the AI companies. We work with Perplexity. We work with Lambda. We work with 11 Labs, Harvey AI, hundreds of others. In fact, I am in San Francisco right now, flying home to the New York area. I was in Perplexity's office yesterday. I brought them deal cookies because they signed their third contract with us in 4 months. And so they move fast. We do too. We do two things, or sort of like two ways to play with us. So we can do end-to-end offsite planning as a service. We've done this hundreds of times all over the world, and we do everything with and for you. So we handle all things venue selection, negotiating, contracting, pay for ourselves on that. In this model, we do a flat fee per person per offsite, and we are saving you up to 50% on your room blocks, your meeting space, all that. We're helping you manage every single logistical item in planning your offsite, and then we're really being thought partners in how to have a higher ROI offsite. So really looking at the agenda with you hour by hour, thinking about your business goals, and helping you maximize that, whether it's a sales kickoff, an executive team retreat, an engineering team meeting, kind of whatever your goals are, we're helping you plan the best, most transformative offsite possible. So we do end-to-end offsite planning as a service, basically give you a wedding planner, dedicated offsite planner in-house. We also have an Airbnb style marketplace. So if you have an internal events team, or if you want to start by doing it yourself, you can make a free account at offsite.com. There's no credit card required. It looks exactly like Airbnb. And you could search through all the partnerships that we have. And so we partner with over 1,000 hotels globally, where we're getting 20, 30, 40, 50% off on those room blocks. We're getting discounts on meeting space, food and beverage, all that. And then we've recently added vendors to the marketplace, so you can get access to the same discounts on swag, photographers, videographers, and more that our team is getting for our clients. I also wanted to celebrate this incredible registration. And so we're possibly doing a first ever where we're giving away $360 worth of AI tools if you make a free account at offsite.com. And I'll put the link in the chat for you. It's also on your screen. So if you make a free account with us at Offsite, whether now or in follow-up to the webinar, you'll have a chance to win $360 worth of AI tools, including Perplexity Pro, Fixer AI, which is a recent favorite, and then Bolt, which we're using on our product team to do like clickable prototypes. That's it for me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jared. Awesome. All right. Well, we have nearly 700 people on this call, so super exciting. Clearly, this Nova Chat really, really resonates with all of you and out there in the industry. It's highly, highly relevant. So, without further delay, let me introduce Fiona Young. Fiona is the founder of Carve, a series of live digital courses for executive assistants to learn AI, create capacity, and develop into strategic assistants and strategic operators, carving out their career growth in the process. So, previous to Carve, Fiona spent over 15,000 hours refining what modern digital learning experiences look like. Fiona and I have spent some time talking about her programming and how she approaches facilitation and, just really the course experience. And her and I are really alike in how deeply we care about that student experience and how methodical we are in ensuring that it's built really, really well. So, with that, Fiona, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and it's such a pleasure to see these fabulous hellos coming in through the chat. So please do keep them coming and keep the prompts coming. I think it's such a great way to inspire each other, actually. And just
Yeah.
this week, we've been on the Carve AI course, we've been sharing prompts, actually. So I've had a ton of them coming through, blowing up my WhatsApp every day, and it's always super inspiring. So I'm sure we'll get more into prompts a little bit later.
I know. Okay. Well, Fiona, what was your most recent prompt? Do you remember what you prompted in the last hour or two today?
I think, I actually slightly embarrassingly have been really pushing myself to try to write more with AI. And this is one of those hurdles that I feel like for me personally, I've really struggled with, partly because I love writing and partly because I'm very particular about the way that I write. But in the last 6 months, I've really pushed myself on it. So I got some ideas on how to draft my last LinkedIn post this morning.
Yeah.
And again, like with all AI, we have to be the pilot, right? We have to be the master of it. And I think it did help me stretch my thinking in some of the areas, like, oh, I'm not being clear here, or I need to expand this or deepen this. But at the end of the day, I still wrote 70% of it, and that's normal, right? And that's something we can go into as we talk about some of our tips today too, that the point is not to chuck everything over the fence to AI and have it do all the thinking and fully create all assets that you do in your job, right? It's really trying to cherry pick, like, what is the best way I can partner with AI here to help me go further faster.
Yeah. And I know we'll get into a lot of that. But first, I would love to hear in your words, like a 1 to 2 minute state of the union on AI for C-suite operators, chiefs of staff, executive assistants. Like, what would you highlight? What would you debunk? What's trending right now? What should people be thinking about, talking about, knowing about?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to sum it up, and certainly what I'm learning with clients I'm working for, so EAs, chiefs of staff, exec ops folks, office of the CEO folks, it's that huge efficiencies are absolutely already possible. So adding an extra half day or day to your week is totally possible right now, but with limitations, right? Like a lot of the tools are half baked. They still require quite a lot of tinkering around with. You're not going to get perfect results on the first stab. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe we can all take heart that we still need our human brains, right? We can't just, like I said before, chuck everything over the fence to AI and automation.
Yeah.
I would also say, I think one of the kind of misconceptions that I hear quite a lot is a lot of talk about AI for efficiency, automation for efficiency, and I think that actually the opportunities here are so much bigger than that. Like, this isn't just tech for tech's sake, just helping us streamline and like save a few hours per week, whatever it may be, right? It's about actually using AI to help you expand your thinking, extend your thinking, to think bigger, to be more creative, to be bolder in the way that you're working. And maybe also helping fill in for your own weaknesses, right? To become ultimately a better version of yourself. And I think too that it's about really having the capacity to do stuff you just didn't have before, right? Like, I think there's tons of stuff on all of our plates we would love to have more support on, or we always feel like, gosh, I'm always reactive on this. I'd love to be a bit more proactive in the way I'm working with my executive in this area. right? And AI offers us the opportunity to be more proactive with that capacity. And certainly, I think we can talk a bit more about that later too. But I think another like kind of misconception, or this sort of question I get a lot from people is like, what is the best AI chatbot out there? What is the best large language model out there? Like a real focus again on the tools. What is the best tool to use? And I always I hate this question when I get it, because I kind of feel like you're asking the wrong question. Like it's really not about what tool you're using. They're all really bloody good. Like no matter which one you use, you will totally transform how you're working, but you need to just use it more. Focus on using it 10 times more than you're using it right now, and focus on how to use it better. So that's, of course, prompting. Like prompting is really the number one thing that you can sharpen and hone and learn, build your skill set around to really radically improve the quality of what you're getting out of these tools. Because really, it doesn't matter which one you're using. Most people are just only scratching the surface in terms of how they're using them, right? The use cases. I would say another thing that's really hyped at the moment is AI agents. And I think we've all seen the headlines and industry reports. It's like 2025 is going to be the year of the AI agents. For sure, there's some really interesting agentic AI being launched. I mean, just in the last week, ChatGPT launched its agent function, which hasn't yet been rolled out to all of us yet, but is coming imminently, probably later this week. But even that, is really half-baked. It's like, all right, I'm going to be able to have my ChatGPT go and do something in a browser for me, but it still requires a lot of direction, right? It is not going to be proactively taking off real chunks of your workflow from you and taking it off your to-do list and getting it done autonomously. We still need human in the loop there. So I think, more important than anything is really just focusing on what is your mindset in all of this. And I mean, I sort of hate saying this on a webinar like today's, because obviously you all are here. Like I'm preaching to the choir here, right? Like you're in the right mindset. You're here to learn. You want to learn. You want to grow. You want to expand your role. You want to drive your career forward. You're ambitious, like all that great stuff. So really, like, probably I don't need to say this message to you, but I think we just need to focus on that mindset of constantly learning and unlearning, and also experimentation. So yeah, I think maybe final one I would say is like there will be winners and losers. I think we're already seeing a huge gap emerge between folks who are using these tools every day and folks who are not. So if you're in that latter camp, you need to get on the train now. Right. And I'm sure like you're here again, probably like most of you are already on that train, but really and we can talk more about this as we go on, but high level, I would say we all need to be really investing the time, figuring out how these tools can work for us.
That makes a ton of sense. I am launching a poll right now to find out how often folks are using AI. So I think I did that right. If I didn't, apologies. But it looks like we're starting to get some results. So we will share those in a bit. You said a lot of things that I kind of want to just sink in on and capture for the group here. I think the one that stuck with me the most is definitely what you're most passionate here about, which is, okay, what's the best tool? Wrong question. The right question is, how can I use the tool that I'm using better? And it sounds like the most simplistic answer, which is something that I actually completely deeply agree with, is you need to use it more. Use it more, figure out the use cases, you'll use it better and better, and you'll build familiarity and you'll go back to it more frequently. I was chatting with an executive assistant recently about EA roles, EA, use cases with AI, and the headlines that we're seeing of AI is going to take EA's jobs. I don't think either of us believe that, at least anytime soon. And one of the examples that came up that we were chatting about is really the ever-changing priorities in the C-suite. And let's say that AI can schedule meetings. Great. We've got an agent, a bot, they can schedule the meetings. Okay. but how do they know the priority level of the meeting and which meetings can move and which meetings we actually need to loop somebody else into because of something that happened yesterday or earlier today or even a few days ago? And, without a human sitting there typing in all of these things to ChatGPT, it just doesn't sound reasonable or efficient at all. So there's this human element that I don't believe will ever go away, which is just the day-to-day of the ever-changing, chaotic world of a leader's office, right? And how can an AI bot understand priorities when they're just changing at the last minute? So do you have any kind of thoughts there and reactions to that use case?
Yeah, I mean, completely. I agree with you that for sure the repeatable admin drudgery no one liked to do anyway will fall away. But there is a whole lot of really deeply human stuff that we do in this role, right? It is a really human role. It is all about the relationships that you have, your deep and nuanced understanding, judgment, taste, right? To be able to operate on behalf of top executives whose people, these are people whose currency is time, of course. So yeah, I completely agree with that we will still need human in the loop certainly for the foreseeable. No one has a crystal ball though, right? So it's like, I sometimes like giggle when I see like futurists talking about like what the world is going to be like in 5 or 10 or 50 years. And you're sort of like, well, no one really knows. Okay. But I think all that we can do is really get ahead of this stuff by really leaning into it, figuring out how it can work for us, and also really thinking about how we can reshape our own roles, because yeah, a lot of that mindless kind of admin drudgery is going to fall away. So how do you fill that time and how do you make sure that you are still incredibly valuable and relevant within your role to your executive and within your exec team?
Yeah. How are you adding the strategic value that that you deeply know when
Yes.
you consider what's on your plate, what's on your workload that cannot be taught or repeated by somebody, by a robot. So,
Yes.
okay, next question for you. You've said that AI can raise the ceiling for executive operations as a whole. So paint us a picture of what a high performing, maybe chief of staff or senior strategic executive assistant looks like once that ceiling lifts.
I mean, I think what's interesting here is if you hold in your mind this idea that what goes is some of that repeatable mindless admin, like over time as well, that but more and more of that goes with these tools as they become more powerful. If you can imagine a world where we all have, a host of AI agents, essentially like personal assistants able to work on our behalf. And again, still human in the loop. You are still driving the work that they're doing. You are still judging. You're the instigator and the judge in that process to figure out what needs to be done, to prioritize, to think critically about the outputs that these tools come out with. Are they actually, are they good? Are they up to the standards of, something I would have created myself longhand? So there's still a lot of human in the loop in that process. And then I think what you gain, so kind of high level before I talk about specifics, is it's really two sides of the coin, right? You gain capacity for doing more than you can currently do for your exec. So there will be a whole lot of things that you'd like to get ahead of and be more proactive and more strategic about. But I know the reality of this role because I've been in it myself, and you are always chasing your tail. I certainly, I know many of you will be working like 50, 60 plus hour weeks, week on week, and it's just not practical to be trying to do things like, for instance, a strategic calendar audit on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis, right? That's something I'll demo actually today, some ideas of how you can do that to just get ahead of the curve rather than being in reactive mode of, I've got all these things in my inbox, I've got to schedule these meetings, that, I've got to brief my exec for these meetings. It's like, you're actually going to them with ideas and solutions of what needs to change to help both of you, frankly, and to make work more enjoyable for both of you. So that's the kind of like, I guess you could call it double clicking into what you already do, being able to be more proactive rather than in reactive mode on your current work streams. The other side of the coin, I think, and really interesting opportunity is actually taking on totally new work streams. And this is, I've certainly seen a lot of my clients go after this, right? And for each of you, it will look different because it really comes down to where do you spot needs in your organization? Like, where are there projects where, maybe you're under-resourced, there's a big push for hiring, for instance, and your people team can't keep up. And maybe that's an area where you could say, hey, listen, why don't I design a process to help use AI as part of this, but to start build out the interview plan, start to build out the screening process, et cetera. So to sort of cherry pick stretch assignments like that where you can see a need, and also where you feel that that aligns well with your personal strengths and your personal interests. So literally for each of you, it will be completely different. Probably also depends a bit on the nature of your organization, the business that you do, your products, your services, your executive, the role that they're in, the pet projects that are top of mind for them and that will drive them forward. What are their priorities for the coming 6, 12, 24 months, right? And those will all inform things where you could lean in and really add a huge amount of extra value beyond what you do today. So, I'll give you some examples, certainly. Again, like I think that how the day would look would be different for everyone. But you can imagine that, currently with AI meeting note takers, you have the ability, assuming your exec is able to use these tools, to essentially be in the room for all of their meetings, right? To be able to go through and to be able to, at a high level, see what's been said, what's been agreed, actions, follow-ups, what accountability measures can you drive without actually having to be in the room, let alone like think of all of the context on the business, the business intel that you can pick up from essentially having been in the room without being in the room on all those meetings. And then as you think about even just within that one workflow with AI of what you can do, it's supercharging scheduling processes for sure. It is helping you be more strategic in how you set up the calendar to begin with. It is helping you build out really powerful exec briefings for important meetings so that they turn up to the meeting knowing what are the 3 questions I should be asking here. Or, what are the 2 things I need to know about our current client relationship here or what are the 3 difficult questions this client is likely to ask me based on kind of taking the temperature around the organization of how things are going with that client. So just some ideas of how that may play out. And then on the flip side, of course, it's you learning from the insights and the intel within that meeting without having to be physically in the room. And finally, it's being able to drive the follow-ups and follow-ons, end of day, being able to pull together like, right, so today, from these 6 external meetings you had, here are the list of actions you agreed to. Here's how I've suggested prioritizing them and who we can essentially delegate to. Things I can do for you, things that, our chief of staff can do for you, things that so-and-so, head of partnerships needs to take on, et cetera, and closing the loop on all of the comms of that. So I think, that's just one single work stream, but I think meetings is something that we all deal with, probably, we all have in common within these roles. And so you can imagine just how much more valuable you can be through that process. There's so much less on your executive's plate. And there's also less balls being dropped, frankly. And when you start to add automation into the mix, and hopefully in the future, agentic AI, you can imagine how this becomes even faster and more efficient and less prone to human error. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. I'm conscious of time. I feel like I could talk about this one forever. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really helpful, and we can get into a few more specifics here.
yeah.
I probably won't have time to go through Q&A at the end of this Nova chat, but we'll do our best to incorporate questions in, future blog, future content. And I'm looking through them now kind of as live as we discuss. And something that's come up a lot in the chat today is moving from strategic operator, maybe senior executive assistant into project management. And if there are tools like AI specific tools, or maybe AI specific, to your point earlier, prompting use cases and best practices within the tool you're using that can lead to better or enhanced or even just like more using of project management abilities and capabilities.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, I would say like the most powerful tools out there for you will be your AI chatbot, whichever one you're able to use. So whether that's Copilot or ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, there's a whole lot of stuff you can do within those tools to help you structure projects, to work through what are the work streams for this project, what are the right timescales for this project, who's accountable at each stage, how to prioritize all of this. So that's the kind of, in a nutshell, the key ways that a lot of my clients are using AI for project management right now. But it gets interesting when you start to build out automations with project management tools. And of course, different folks here are going to be using different tools. But for instance, just to give you a snapshot of what's possible, like if you're using Asana AI is probably the best AI that's baked into any of the major project tools that I've used. So it's able to give you really high level, kind of like executive summary snapshot of how a project is going. That's the sort of stuff that's like a total, gold dust for an executive who's stepping into a meeting and has 30 seconds to prepare on their phone as they're walking through the door, right? So being able to, to give your exec that context quickly and easily, I think is hugely powerful. And then you can also build out automations. So for instance, to be able to trigger anytime I flag an email as, a specific label I've pre-set up, that will actually summarize the status on a piece of this project, and it will funnel it through into my Asana or my Trello. It will figure out, using the power of AI, what exactly has changed or been updated, and it will auto update that within that project plan. So rather than you manually having to do those steps by hand, you can automate that by setting up, rules in advance. If I do this, then I want you to do that. So in a nutshell, that's what no-code automation is. And obviously it just becomes a lot more powerful when you embed AI into that process. So you have a human-like brain of like your ChatGPT actually looking at this and looking at the project and kind of working through, like, using common sense. What is Fiona trying to achieve here? What is the update that needs to be added, et cetera.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it is helpful to talk through the project management tools that exist today and understand that AI and automation is being built into them and from them.
Yes.
With tools like Zapier, and I know you're a fan of Make. So Monday.com, Asana, combined with Zapier and Make, and you're setting up automations. And then it sounds like Asana has a really valuable summary tool that can, read a project update for you. I think those are some of the tools that exist today that are already project management tools. And which tells us that you still need a project management tool, even if it could be manual and maybe you're creating it in PowerPoint, or maybe you're using Asana or Monday, paired with strong AI use. So I think that's interesting to kind of sink in on there. I will share a guide after this call. Nova Chief of Staff has it's like a 13-page PDF guide for AI use in the C-suite. And there is a section in here around project management. And the way we approach kind of teaching, okay, how do we use or leverage something like ChatGPT for project management is considering the components, like Fiona was saying, the components of the project and how to leverage expertise from AI for speed and capacity and efficiency and summaries and whatnot. So AI use cases could be create a project timeline, a task list, draft scopes of work, goal statements, identify project risks, suggest mitigation strategies, build stakeholder communications plans. Now, for those of you really new to AI on the call, we did have a couple questions around like, what is prompting? Prompting is just what you type into the AI tool to get an answer back, to get a response back. You're prompting for a response. So prompts that you could try for project management use cases could be, and these are very simplified, and I'm going to share a couple tips here in a minute from myself, but simplified prompts would be draft a simple project plan for launching a new internal platform, list common risks for company-wide software rollout and suggest ways to manage them, create a stakeholder update plan for a 6-month project. I won't dive into any more detail here on project management, but it's a hot button, topic on this call. So there's components that we can drive ourselves to really add a lot of efficiency, but at the end of the day, you're still likely using a software or a tool that is your, visibility of the project management tracking or the big project as a whole, and then you're streamlining and saving a bunch of time with the addition of AI as a tool to help you.
Yeah, for sure. And I would add like just a couple more bits to build on what you said.
Sure.
Like prompts, absolutely. Like 99% of the time I talk to someone who has issues with AI, like any issue, like, oh, it's crap, I'm not getting good results out of it, or like, it's really not working for me. I can't really seem to find, good quality stuff, or the quality of the writing is really poor. It doesn't sound like me, etc. 99% of the time when I dig into what the root cause is, it is down to poor prompting. It is prompting that is not specific enough and doesn't include all the required elements of a great prompt. I know we probably don't have time because I do want to do a couple like demos today, but I will share afterwards. I have a whole free guide to prompting that
Awesome.
includes a bank of 40 prompts you can use and reuse that are specifically for exec ops folks. And even I think just looking through some good prompts helps you learn what does a good prompt look like, so that's a great way to learn through osmosis. The second thing that I sort of thought about, I didn't mention before about project management. So don't forget that we're all doing project management every day already, right? Like, even if you don't have a qualification or you've never had that in your job title, we all manage projects in our personal and professional lives all the time. So I think sometimes it's easy to forget how much we already know, but I do think that AI can be an incredible coach and tutor. And so you can also lean into just, actually, I'm going to start having a chat with AI about how can I learn more about project management? Let me tell you how I'm running projects currently, what's working well, what are some roadblocks, and you tell me how I could improve. And let's come up with a very specific, tailored, and targeted plan for me to upskill in this area.
That makes a ton of sense. All right. Well, I love that. Let's see. I had a question for you that was about your favorite unexpected prompt that you've run recently, maybe this month, work or personal. And then Fiona, let me know how much time would you like for the demos so that we stay on track here?
It's a piece of string, but no, I'm just kidding. I think we should probably save about 10 minutes and can always
Perfect.
adjust and adapt, can always speed up or slow down a bit, depending.
Perfect. Yeah. So tell us about your most recent favorite prompt.
Oh, so I actually shared this with my Carve AI learners. I think it was over the weekend. This is kind of more of a personal life one, and it was quite philosophical. And it's something that I just read online and thought, I want to try this for myself. And it was, let me just pull this up. Actually, I wrote it down to tell you the exact prompt. What is a truth about life that most humans ignore, but you can't unsee? And I thought that was quite interesting. So I put it in and I got a really great response about how, as humans, we are all just running on scripts, right? Scripts that have been informed by our childhood, our upbringing, our caretakers, our relationships, and we are living 99% of the time, we are just living our life on autopilot. And we're not critically thinking about, is that a valid way to be approaching this problem? Or what are some other ways I might consider, partnering with my exec, in a work context, for instance, other than the only way that I know how. And so I thought that was really, really interesting. And then I went down the rabbit hole, kind of looking at a whole thread on Reddit about this, of like different people's responses, because of course, part of the nature of the beast of large language models is they'll never give you the same response twice. And so it's really interesting just to see how a lot of them were similar to the result that I got. And sort of in that same vein, but there was some really thought-provoking stuff in there. So I would encourage you to try that yourself. Why don't I put it in the chat, actually, since I did write it down?
Yes.
I'll just copy paste it, share it in the chat. So put a pin in this one.
I love
Great
that.
question, though.
So, two questions that are really valid and continue to be. And I don't think, we need to spend more than a couple minutes on each, but I would love to touch on them on this call, which is the privacy considerations in your company and how to approach AI use when you're thinking about company data and privacy. And then the second would be the ethical concerns around the environment and the impact on the environment. There's other ethical concerns, but let's stick with that one for now.
Sure. So I'd say regarding data privacy, the biggest issue within this is how are these large language models training on your data, right? And that's really your prompt data. So that's the question, the instructions you're putting in, and it's also anything that you upload. Because these are large language models that have been trained on literally trillions of words and sentences from around the internet. And the more data they have, the more powerful they become. So the tech companies behind them have a vested interest in digesting as much of your data as possible to help build their model and make it better over time. So the key question to ask, first off, is what is my company policy, right? So what are tools I am able to use and how am I able to use them? And obviously abiding by that. I know in practice that many of you won't have an AI policy, and that's what's making all this a little bit more difficult. So if that's you, then my advice for you is just to deeply understand, how is this tool using my data, and locking that down. So a lot of them by default, including even the paid version of ChatGPT, which many of you will be using, by default, the paid version will be training on your data unless you go in and you change your settings to request they do not train on your data. So that's the most important thing that you can do to really lock down your data privacy. Because even if you trust, like, oh, they're going to use it safely and ethically, which if you ask me, I don't trust them at all. Even if you do trust, there's always a risk of a data breach, right? And that's why I think if you don't have a company policy, I would just pause if you're thinking about putting something in there that is extremely sensitive IP, perhaps, the content of board meetings that, is off the record, or anything that's super sensitive that if it became public would be career damaging to you or your exec. I would really pause unless you have express permission of your company to use that tool. I wouldn't be putting that stuff into AI tools, period. So regarding ethical kind of environmental concerns, I find this is always like such a hard one to answer quickly, but I'll do my best. I think, for all of us, we want to tread more lightly on the earth, right? I think all of us do care about our carbon footprint, right? But all of us, of course, do have a demonstrable impact on the environment already. And I think we all have to weigh up those choices every day, right? And certainly for me, I have several friends who are vegan or are vegetarian, and they've made that choice primarily because of the environmental impact of eating meat. To them, they're like, you know what, this is something I can do. This is an area where I can pitch in, where I feel comfortable, giving up meat. And I feel like I'm doing the best I can. For other people, like I literally listened to a podcast the other day. It was a persuasive podcast on BBC Radio 4 with a lady who gave this lecture about how if you really want to help the environment, the single best thing that you can do is choose not to have children. And she went on to say, I made the choice not to have children because of the impact on the environment of bringing humans into this world. And I was a little bit floored by that. That's pretty extreme. But I'm trying to make the point here that we all have choices to make, and we're all doing the best we can, right? Yeah. So I think for sure using AI models uses real computing power, right? It uses resources, it uses electricity, it uses water, cooling, and so on and so forth, right? As does writing emails, okay? But AI models use a lot more compute. And a good shorthand of how much compute you're using is think about what is the processing time. So if you're creating a video, it's going to be maybe 5 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on how long that video is. If you're popping a short prompt into your ChatGPT, it will be 5 milliseconds. So obviously the amount of compute used is radically different. And if you're using some of the advanced models, like advanced reasoning models and advanced research models that have emerged in the last 6 to 12 months, you'll notice that they're slower. And that's because they're using more compute. So for me personally, as someone who, my job is to train people on AI, I have to use these tools. It is necessary for me to use these tools. I still won't just create stuff like video content or even a deep research query for shits and giggles. I'm I have to be able to justify this because I don't feel right. It doesn't sit right with me ethically to feel oh, I'm just willy-nilly creating some silly fun videos all the time. You're just using resources needlessly. You might not see that cost, but the cost is there to the environment. So I think we all just need to reflect on what am I comfortable with and what is the best that I can reasonably do? With most things in life, this isn't black or white. This isn't I'm not using it because of the environment. It's well, how could I use it in a way that's most sensitive? Let me use the advanced reasoning model O4 mini rather than using O3 because it uses less compute. That's what mini means, right? It's faster, it's more efficient, uses less compute. You're walking more treading more lightly on the earth. Sorry. So yeah, that would be my advice to you. Sorry, I don't have a perfect blueprint for this, but I think that gives you some ideas to reflect on for yourself and what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. I care deeply about the environment personally and make a lot of choices in my life to, like you said, tread as lightly as possible. When I think about AI use, I think about it as a transformational technology, like a car, where I'm adopting it because it's that transformational to my personal business to my day-to-day to my capacity, et cetera. And I love how you think about, okay, what's the compute time? Is this intentional? How can I be more intentional? And what else in my life can I consider, my carbon footprint? So it's definitely not an easy answer, but I do believe that it is a transformational, time and technology for us. And especially for me as a business owner, for, people on the call as, folks who are needing to up level and add strategic value and consider new and better ways of working, there's a lot of relevance to figuring out how to use AI for you and to do so intentionally and thoughtfully. So appreciate you spending a couple minutes there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
And
yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, I want to hear your top tips for AI as well, Maggie, before we run out of time for it.
Yes. Okay, so I will share my top tips for AI use, and I hear often we've been having the AI conversations for about a year and a half now, and I still hear weekly that folks are looking to build comfortability with AI, and so I'm going to share really what I recommend for folks looking to add more comfort and familiarity with AI use. So first and foremost, stop Googling it. Put it all in ChatGPT instead. This is not because necessarily the answer is going to be better. It is going to be better. But mainly the reason why I suggest this is because you are going to figure out the use cases that ChatGPT can solve for you, because we Google everything. Okay, where's this? Should I rebuy this serum? Was a very recent one that I was like, is it worth the money? Where is this place? What should I do here? What's this kind of dog? What ChatGPT offers back is an understanding of like the wide variety of use cases and abilities, and you're going to start to build familiarity. So I've been doing this now for 9+ months. Sometimes I forget and I Google it and I regret it. So tech issues is my example here. We're setting up LastPass or we're setting up something in GoDaddy. It used to be a huge pain to figure out how to troubleshoot tech issues, especially if you don't have a tech person in your company. It is, oh my gosh, 20x better now, because ChatGPT, for the most part, will have a step-by-step guide for you. And even if it's wrong the first time, reprompting, you figure out the answer from a tech issues perspective. The next one here is really what I've started to call stream of consciousness prompting. And the reason why I refer to it this way is because we're told to, if you've been on these chats before, if you've been, in the world of AI for a while, you're told to build this beautiful prompt and tell it what you want it to act like. Like, I want you to be this person, and I am this person, and I'm looking for this, this, and this. For me, it's easier to approach a very detailed prompt by picking up my phone and hitting the microphone button and just starting to talk. Stream of consciousness, rather than perfectly articulating a prompt. It's not going to be as perfect as you could make it, and that's why we reprompt, but it will help you just get all of your thoughts around what you're looking to prompt. So for example, strategic support. I am looking at a deck from 2024 from last year, and I would like to build a new deck for 2025 based on the strategic initiatives of 2024. As you're thinking about stream of consciousness prompting, it could be something like, I want you to be my advisor, and I want you to have 20 years of experience in sales and marketing. And what would you suggest I follow up for 2025? Oh, don't forget to include this and this and this. And I want it to sound kind of like this. And I want your tone to be, you can just keep adding on stream of consciousness, put it in, see what happens. And then of course, we're going to reprompt. Third suggestion here. ChatGPT, or whatever LLM you're using, is a starting point or an ending point for content, but often not both. Probably for a while still, not both. What does that mean? Well, if we're thinking about an executive communication, you're writing an all-employee comm for your leader that's going to your employee base, and it's about a return to office initiative. One way is you could start in, let's say, ChatGPT, and you could say, I need to write this employee comm, and I want to make sure that it's in the tone of my executive, and they use this language pretty often, and I want to include X, Y, and Z, and let's include these dates. Okay, that's a starting point. You take what ChatGPT gives back to you, and you finish it. You update. You add a few things. You Might reprompt and say, remove those dang M dashes. You're gonna tweak it yourself. You might reprompt. The other option, though, is you're starting yourself. Fiona said she likes to write. I love to write too. What I use ChatGPT now for all the time is when I am finished writing something, I pop it into ChatGPT and I say, do not change anything here unless there's a grammar or flow issue. So edit it for grammar or flow, don't change the content. And that's my editor. That's my final editor, but I was the starting point. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I'm not going to get into too much more on the reprompting. That's just how it works. You've got to reprompt and expect that to be part of your workflow. All right.
Yes.
So
many nuggets.
Does that all sound
Thank
good,
you,
Fiona?
Maggie. I know we could carry on talking another hour just like through those ideas. And I think that's such a great, like 4 key nuggets to take away from today. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. I speak the language of the normal people here. So happy to help. All right, Fiona, well, let's dive into your demos. Tell us what you're going to demo today, and then you can feel free to share your screen when you're ready.
So I just want to give you a couple of ideas of ways that you can really do more than you currently do. So support your exec or your exec team more than you currently do by kind of double clicking into existing workflows that you have. So let's look at a couple of examples. And these are things that are straight from clients of mine on the Carve AI program. So shout out to those folks who have shared this so generously in the past. Hopefully you can see my screen now. So first off, I think a great one to start with is a strategic calendar analysis. And this, for me, when I was an EA, was certainly a nice to have. Like, this is the sort of thing I maybe thought about once a year when I wasn't like working 80-hour weeks. And this actually came up like just a week ago in our Carve AI summer cohort. Someone shared this prompt, and this example is, here's a week of my CEO's calendar. Can you analyze it, suggest how we could make it more efficient, reduce context switching, and protect time for strategic work? Please group similar meetings, flag low value blocks, recommend one change that could make the week feel calmer, which is a very good prompt. Essentially, what you need here is you do need to capture that calendar data in some way. You can do this with some calendar tools. You could do this through screenshots if your snapshot of the calendar in view has sufficient data in it. You could also do this by actually downloading the data and uploading it into your AI chatbot. And then, I have a slightly different prompt. This follows my kind of quaff prompting. By the way, this prompt is in my prompts guide. So please don't feel like you have to like screenshot or scribble this down or whatever. You'll definitely get access to this later. But essentially, you want to give it the parameters that are specific to your exec and to your business and the pain points you see. Right? Maybe it's, okay, we need earlier finishes. My exec's kid has just started, kindergarten and needs a little bit more support after school, whatever it may be. There's going to be something, I'm sure, specific to you and your business that you're aiming for. So you can also use a calendar tool. So here's an example of Cabinet. There are many, I would say the 4 purpose-built calendar tools for EAs and executive operators are Cabinet, ShareCal, Execify, and VimCal EA. So those are the 4 options that all have calendar insight functionality. So what you're looking at is just a day-by-day breakdown of how this executive, Jude Scott, is using their time. You can also slice and dice it in different ways. So here is actually over a certain period of time. So over 1 month or 3 months or whatever you select, this is a proportion of how their time is spent. So this will really turbocharge the data that you're getting out, right? Because it's a lot more accurate than just using screenshots or using the raw data out of the calendar. So let's have a quick look at how this plays out with the prompt that I showed you on the last slide. So we're going to use O4 Mini. So again, in the spirit of treading lightly on the earth, using a mini but still advanced reasoning model, you see here, I'm just going to upload these screenshots. You could add further data as well, but just for simplicity, let's add those ones, which I just showed you. And then we are going to run this prompt. And you'll see that I have asked for 3 key changes, right? So it's going to spend a second thinking, and you can actually look through that thinking process if you want, which is one of the benefits of advanced reasoning models. And so it comes up with these 3 big ideas: batching similar stakeholder meetings, flagging and streamlining low value or administrative blocks, carve out protected strategic focus time, right? With like specific ideas or insights within there. So for instance, like this is a great insight. Onboarding calls and task time are about 11% of the week. Okay, I'd like to double click into what are onboarding calls and like how much of my exec's time is that taking up? Because surely we could streamline and do joint onboarding sessions, have those regularly every fortnight or every month or whatever to streamline that time. Some of these you may look at and say, well, that's crap. That's not helpful at all. Like for my, execs I've worked with, certainly trying to block focus periods like this just wouldn't work because they had 60 hours of external meetings a week. So it's like, it's not possible. Like, we need to find a way to streamline in other ways, right? Just sort of adding in a block is not going to help them with their focus. So hopefully this gives you a flavor of some of the insight that you can draw out a lot more efficiently and effectively using AI that, right now might be out of reach for you, right? It might be beyond the capacity that you have. So now I'd love to talk to you for a second about NotebookLM. And actually, like in the chat, please do share if you've used NotebookLM. And I'd love to hear how you're using it or where you found value in it. So I'll demo it to you in a second. I think it's a little bit easier to see kind of how it works by just seeing the inside of it. But essentially, one great way to use it is for briefings for your exec on industry trends or on competitors, or even on really important clients as they're going into client meetings, or potentially investors if they're the sort of executive who has to report to investors and boards. And so what you would do is essentially upload your source documents. So these could be things like industry reports and white papers, keynotes, even stuff off of YouTube, which is fabulous. And you're essentially going to generate a podcast episode out of it, right? At the click of a button, you can generate that podcast episode, and it will take all of the knowledge embedded within those docs, YouTube's, podcasts, other things you want to add in, even scraped web pages are possible. And it will zip it into a roughly 10-minute podcast episode that they can access on the go to help them really deeply understand these topics without having to go and read all those reports, watch all those YouTube keynotes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really streamlined way to help your exec learn and be prepared for important stuff that's on the horizon for them. So I'm just going to stop sharing because I need to reshare my browser for you. And we can dive in. I'm just going to make sure I share my sound here. I'll give you a snippet of the podcast as well. Or actually, I don't think I'm able to share sound. No worries. I'll give you a view of what it looks like anyway. So essentially, you can see in here when you log into NotebookLM, you'll have different notebooks, right? So these are notebooks that you can create as you click into them. So we're going to go into this Gen AI's impact on jobs and on work. You can see that what I've done here, because this is a trend that I'm really personally interested in, is I have actually built up a huge set of sources here, right? From various different, from McKinsey, from Mary Meeker. Mary Meeker, this is a 300-page PDF, by the way. So these are like huge documents. You can upload up to 50, and then you can actually have a chat with it. And what's great is that NotebookLM includes this thing called source grounding. Essentially, your output is going to be way more accurate and way less likely to hallucinate because it is pulling from your direct sources rather than a normal ChatGPT, which is pulling from its entire knowledge base, the entire internet, right? So it is literally just pulling from what you've fed it. So it gives you a much, much, much better and more accurate output. You can also create things like mind maps. As you are chatting with your NotebookLM, you can pin chats. So essentially, if it comes up with a great insight, you might want to just say, actually save this as a note, and it'll come up here on the right side. And finally, and most impressively, it does create this podcast. So this is a 14-minute podcast, which if we listen to it, gives you a pretty stellar summary of these. I think is about 15 sources that I have in here now for 2025. So yeah, definitely one that's worth playing around with. And just note as well, if you're concerned about data privacy, no need to upload internal documents here if you're using this on a personal account rather than through a work account. And so if you're concerned about that, oh gosh, I wouldn't want to put a slide deck from our last board meeting in here, for instance, you can see that I'm using this in quite an impactful way, just using public source, publicly available documents, nothing that is proprietary information from my company. So hopefully that gives you an idea. I mean, there's tons of different implications for this, but I know we're just at time. So I'll stop us there.
so useful. So it sounds like Notebook LLM is probably well and above and far and beyond what a custom ChatGPT can do right now, that you, even if you load it yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It is way more powerful. I think there's still, a world where, you want to build custom GPTs. Certainly, I have about 10 custom GPTs I use every day.
Yeah.
So I would recommend looking at those too.
Cool.
But yeah, worth having a play around NotebookLM.
Awesome. Well, we always get feedback that folks wish these were longer. So,
I
feel free
wish
to,
this was
I
longer.
know, feel free to share that. Totally can share that. And we will do our best in our recap email to get you a ton of resources to summarize questions. We'll do our best to summarize prompt lists. We'll share how to get in touch with Fiona and Carve and her amazing resources that she's also sharing post call. So there's a lot coming at everybody on this call. We hit 700 and over 25 people. So thank you all for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And for a month, you can enroll with Nova for $250 off, which will be the lowest price that our course will ever be for you. So would love to meet you in the course. And thank you everyone for being here. Thanks so much, Fiona.
No, thank you, Maggie. And also thank you, Jared. Thanks for sponsoring this. It's been
Yes.
fabulous. Please do connect on LinkedIn, stay in touch.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.